We're on. Share screen. All right, guys. Takes a second. I'm not sure what the holdup is here. All right, there we go. Finally clicked over. All right, here we go, guys. All right, sorry about the delay here. Again, solving using the quadratic formula. All right, now again, I posted a video. Hopefully you had a chance to take a look at that. If not, we'll kind of start from scratch today. Please speak up as soon as you're not understanding something. All right, the quadratic formula is used to solve a quadratic when it cannot be factored. So for example, 2x squared plus 8x plus 3 cannot be factored. So they had to come up a way with solving it because it couldn't be factored. They knew there were two solutions because that's the fundamental theorem of algebra, is the degree tells you how many solutions there are. Now, the next time we meet, I'm going to teach you how to solve by completing the square. And when we solve by completing the square, I'm going to, I will show you how they come up with that formula. Because the first time the teacher showed me that formula, I was like, come on, who's making this stuff up? All right, now, it seems though, yeah. All right, Lorenzo's back in now. All right, hey Lorenzo, sorry, I'm not sure what happened. All right, but now what I want to do is just review quickly. The quadratic is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Remember, a is the number in front of the square term, b is the number in front of the x, and we say c is the constant. C is the constant. So what I describe for you is that in this case, problem number 2, a equals 2, b equals 8, and c equals 3. That's what I need you to know. All right. Now, the easiest way to learn the quadratic formula is obviously just by writing it out. All right. So we're going to write it out. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. All right, that's the formula that we're going to be using. Now we're just going to substitute in the numbers. Very simple process. X equals negative 8 plus or minus the square root. Now, I'm going to go ahead and write it in this time. 8 squared minus 4 times 2 times 3 all over 2 times 2. Now the question is, all right, is there anybody that's having any trouble with that just basic substitution? Anybody have any questions? Okay, straightforward. Now it's just a matter of, can you do the arithmetic? All right, so here we go. X equals negative 8 plus or minus the square root. 8 squared is 64. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 3 is 24. All over 4. So now x equals negative 8 plus or minus the square root of 40 over 4. Anybody have any questions with that? Now, that's just simplifying with the arithmetic. Now we have to look back and say, okay, the square root of 40 can be broken down. There is a perfect square. All right, so we're going to go negative 8 plus or minus. 40 is 4 times 10. And now the square root of 4 is 2. Okay, so now we're almost done. But does anybody have any questions with how I broke down 40? All right, now The final step, obviously.
Can you repeat that? I didn't hear how you broke down 40.
Okay, so 40 is the same as 4 times 10, right? Now, the reason why we choose 4 times 10 is because 4 is a perfect square. And the square root of 4 is 2. That's where this 2 comes from. 10 does not have a perfect square, so that's left behind.
I get it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Now what I want to do is I want to look at these numbers here. I'm going to choose a better color. I'm going to look at this number here, the -8, the 2, and the 4, and recognize that those can all be divided by 2. Notice I didn't say the 10 because the 10 is the irrational part. All right, so now I'm going to divide by 2. All right, now if I divide that by 2, I get -4 plus or minus 2 divided by 2 is 1, radical 10 over 2. Now, of course, we don't have to put the 1 there, but I just did, just so you'd understand. I divided the 8 by 2, the 2 by 2, and the 4 by 2. All right, with addition and subtraction, everything has to be divisible by 2. All right, now that's really important, guys. So I need you, if you're not sure what I did, now's the time to speak up. Everybody pretty comfortable? I know it is pretty straightforward. All right, the hardest part is learning the actual equation. All right. Anybody have any issues? All right, good deal. All right, so now let's look at number 4. So number 4, we just say A equals 1, B equals 8, and C equals 3. Now we're going to go ahead and X equals -b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So x equals -8 plus or minus the square root. 8 squared again is 64 minus 4 times 1 times 3 all over 2. Simplifying that, x equals -8 plus or minus the square root of 64 minus 12 over 2. 64 minus 12 is 52, so x equals -8 plus or minus the square root of 52 over 2. And 52 is 4 times 13, so 52 can be broken down. So we say -8 plus or minus 2 radical 13 over 2. And now we look at it and we see that everything is divisible by 2. So our final answer is just -4 plus or minus. I could put the 1, but it's not necessary. Radical 13. All right, now I know I went a little fast, okay? And I'm going to try to slow down some. All right, but really concentrate on what I'm saying, please. All right. Does anybody have any questions with the arithmetic there? Of plugging the numbers in, simplifying? Because obviously these are just the basics. All right, when we get down further, you got to make some decisions. All right. So right now, all I'm showing you is just plug numbers into a formula. And I know everyone can plug numbers into the formula. Hopefully you remember everything about breaking down the square roots. But again, remember guys, I want you to ask me some questions if you're not clear. All right, so I'm happy with that.
Mr. Strong?
Yeah,
why
good.
Is the, why is the plus or minus there?
All right, so let's think back. Whenever you had, for example, x squared equals 4, do you agree x could be plus or minus 2, right?
Yeah.
Right, so,
so
you see what I'm saying? So to solve it, a quadratic, it's always going to have 2 solutions, and it's always going to be a plus or minus. Now, I promise you the next time we meet, I'm going to show you how they derived this formula. And it's really actually the first time I'll actually be able to show you something that someone figured out that you're going, wow, that's pretty cool. Well, it was cool when I saw it, you know, because my teacher showed me that formula. I was like, come on, man, who's making this stuff up? All right. Was like, there's no way that works. All right. But then when you prove it, it's really fascinating. All right. So we'll do that the next time we meet, and we'll do that by completing the squares. All right. That's the next topic. Okay. So let's knock out number 6 now, if everybody's good. I'm going to slide this out of the way. Okay. So for number 6, all right, here we go. So we would say, again, I think this is a good way to start it. A equals 3, B equals -6, C equals 2, and then just should be practice. X equals -b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. All right, and again, the more you write it down, the quicker you'll learn it. Now, from here, all right, from here now, we're going x equals negative. Now, don't forget it's -6 plus or minus the square root. -6 squared is 36 minus 4 times 3 times 2 all over 2 times 3. Anybody have any questions or concerns with that? Okay, now it's a matter of just doing the arithmetic. So x is equal to 6 plus or minus the square root. 4 times 3 is 12. 12 times 2 is 24. Because we're brilliant, 36 minus 24 is 12 over 6. Anybody have a problem with that? Nobody? All right, man, we're doing great.
How did you get the 6?
On the bottom?
The bottom, but on the top.
Okay, so watch. Do you see how this is -b?
Yeah.
That just means the opposite of whatever this is. Right.
Oh.
Or
Okay.
we say, yeah, or we say -6, which becomes +6.
All right. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome, buddy. All right, here we go now. So now I have x equals 6 plus or minus. We know 12 is 4 times 3. Square root of 4 is 2. So we have 2 radical 3 over 6. Okay. And then we divided it through by 2. So x equals 3 plus or minus radical 3 over 3. Now remember, technically this is a 1, but I just don't have to put it there. All right. Now I know you guys are having some internet issues because I know people are dropping out. Somehow they lose, and I'm watching my screen carefully. So when you get admitted, I'll be happy to let you back in. Okay, Drew, what you got?
Can we reduce the 3 right now?
Very, very good question, and I should have said that. All right. Now, again, that's a really good question. Thank you. See how the 3 and the 1 are bounded by addition and subtraction. So you cannot divide that. All right, you cannot divide that. Now, because you asked that question, I'm going to show you something else. If I said 4 plus 2, or I'm sorry, 4 plus 4 divided by 4, we wouldn't just cross out the 4s and make it a 1. Right? You see how that's not true, right? If you're going to divide, you have to divide everything when there's addition and subtraction involved. Right? That's the most common mistake that's made, is people just cross out through addition and subtraction. You cannot cross out through addition and subtraction.
Okay.
All right, very good question. All right, here we go. Let's check out number 8 now. Number 8, I have A equals 1, B equals 4, C equals -6, x equals negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So x is equal to negative 4 plus or minus 4 squared is 16 minus 4 times 1 times negative 6 all over 2 times 1. So x is equal to negative 4 plus or minus the square root. So this would be 24. 24 plus 16 is 40 all over 2. All right, now please don't be afraid. If you have a question, jump in. Now we got to break down 40, right? It's 2 radical 10, so it's negative 4 all over 2. And then now this is divisible, and this is divisible, and this is divisible by 2. So we have negative 2 plus or minus radical 10. All right, that's a nice problem right there, guys. Anybody? Everybody getting the hang of it? All right, I think we got one more example before you have to start making some choices. All right, so we'll do one more quadratic formula. All right. So here we have A equals 4, B equals negative 8, C equals 1. Again, writing the formula, x equals negative b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Then what we're going to do is x equals negative 8, which is positive 8, plus or minus b squared is 64 minus 4 times 1 all over 2 times 4, which is 8. Okay, so now x equals 8 plus or minus square root 64 minus 16, 48 over 8. Everybody still with me? All right, so now
Yeah.
48. Someone tell me how does 48 break down?
16 and 3.
Yay, good job. Thank you very much. So x equals 8 plus or minus 4 radical 3 over 8. And now we say the 8, the 4, and the 8 are divisible by 4. So 2 plus or minus 1 radical 3 over 2. That's another really good problem, guys. All right, anybody have a question with that now? All right, now we're going on to what I call kind of like the thinking problems, where you have lots of different ways now to solve a quadratic. You have to decide what's the best way for you. All right, now for me, on number 12, anytime there's no middle term, you can just isolate the x squared. So because we're good, I want everybody to be able to look at that and just say x squared equals 25 over 4. Anybody have a problem with that? Then we take the square root of both sides. So x equals, whenever you take the square root of a variable, it's plus or minus. Square root of 25 is 5. Square root of 4 is 2. Excuse me, just in case you didn't remember, you could rewrite it like that. Those are equal. Okay? Now, let's say you remember back to a long time ago, I told you that could factor. So we're going to do it again, just in case. All right, 2 sets of parentheses, 2x and 2x, 5 and 5, plus 5 minus 5. And if you recall, positive 10, negative 10, middle term is 0, so that's good. 2x times 2x is the 4x squared. 5 times negative 5 is that negative 25. All right. Once you have it factored, you set the factors equal to 0. And then you solve. So x is negative 5 halves. And guess what? Same answer. All right. Just different technique. We could also do the quadratic formula. We would get the same answer. But again, I'm about how easy it is. All right. Number 14. Now it's not set equal to 0. So we have to set it equal to 0. So 2x squared plus x minus 10 equals 0. All right. Now, I know I told you this a long time ago, and you probably, not many kids remember this, but I want to determine whether or not it can factor. So if it can factor, what you have to do is you always take the first term, multiply it by the third term. That's negative 20. If there are factors of negative 20 that are equal to the middle term, which is a positive 1, it can factor. So how do I know that can factor? Because I know that 5 times negative 4 equals negative 20, and 5 minus 4 is 1. So I know it factors. All right. So with that being said, it's much easier to do the factoring rather than using the quadratic formula. So we're going to go 2x and x, 4 and 5. Right. So we're going to definitely put the factors of 10, I'm sorry. The factors of 10 are 2 and 5. So the 2 cannot go on the left, 2 has to go on the right. 5 goes on the left. Now we're going to check, remember, that's positive 5 and 4. So I want that negative, that positive. All right, what you guys did last week is a review, so I know you're good. So here we say x equals negative 5 halves, x equals 2. Okay, anybody have any questions with that? Yeah, you guys did a lot of work last week on factoring, so you should be good. All right, now here again, it's about isolating. Right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to divide by 3. Divide by 3. I end up with x plus 1 squared equals 9. Now I take the square root of both sides. And don't forget, when you take the square root of x squared, you always need the plus or minus. That's where kids make the mistake. So it's plus or minus 3, and then x plus 1. Now you subtract 1. So the answer is negative 1 plus or minus 3. So in this case, x could equal negative 1 plus 3, which is 2, or negative 1 minus 3, which is negative 4. Anybody have any questions now? All right, now again, these are the hard ones because you have to make decisions on how to solve a quadratic. And there's not just one blanket way of here's how to do it. You have to think about what's the best way to do it. Just like number 18 now. All right, there is a square term here. All right, so we're going to isolate the square term. So if we isolate the square term, we're going to add 6, and then we divide by 3. So everyone in here is using good mental math. So we have, everybody should be able to look at that and just say x plus 1 squared equals 8. Now speak up if you don't see how I got the 8, please. Add 6, divide by 3. Now we take the square root of both sides. And what did I tell you? You have to use plus or minus. All right, so here, x plus 1 equals plus or minus 2 radical 2. Anybody have any issues with how I got 2 radical 2? All right, man.
Get that 8.
How did I get 8?
Mm-hmm.
So here we go. What's 18 plus 6 divided by 3? You see what I did? I got rid of the 6, and then I divided by 3. All right, and I'm just helping you with your mental math right now because that's what I want you to be able to do, okay?
Thank you.
If you have to add 6 and blah, 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 feel free, all right? But I don't want you to do that, okay?
Thank you.
So now x equals negative 1 plus or minus 2 radical 2. Anybody have any issues with that? Nobody? All right, I'm feeling pretty good. All right, here we go. Number 20, still same principle. I'm undoing a square. We take the square root. So I have 2x plus 3 equals plus or minus 10. All right, now stay with me. 2x equals negative 3 plus or minus 10. Then I'm dividing by 2. So x equals negative 3 plus or minus 10 all over 2. Now we can actually simplify this, all right? So when we simplify this, now's where I want you to pay attention. Negative 3 plus 10 over 2 is one solution, which is 7 over 2. And the other solution is negative 3 minus 10 over 2, which is negative 13 over 2. All right, anybody have any issues with that? All right. Now, the reason why we separate them this time is because they are both rational numbers. Over here, just an example, we don't write them differently because you cannot add the negative 3 with the 3 radical 5. They stay separated. Here, you can combine these, all right? That's why we do that. Anybody have any questions?
Mr. Stroud,
Yes, sir.
when do you use the plus or minus and when don't you use the plus or minus?
Anytime you have a square term, all right, and you're going to take the square root, you always need plus or minus. All right, now, keep in mind, that has to be a variable, right? So if I say, what's the square root of 4, we don't say plus or minus 2, we just say it's 2, right?
Right.
But if I say, what number squared is equal to 4? What number squared is equal to 4?
Plus or minus 2.
That's exactly correct. There are 2 solutions. You with me?
Oh, okay.
So in here, when you square 10, you'll get 100. And when you square negative 10, you'll get 100. That's why it's plus or minus 10.
Oh, okay.
All right. Now, number 22, I just put on here just to throw you off a little bit. All right. And the reason why I did that is because, again, I'm trying to get you to think. Your job now is to be able to solve lots of equations. So how do I undo a square root? We square both sides. Okay. So now I just get 2x minus 4 equals 64. Now I add 4, 2x equals 68. And so x is equal to 34. All right. Everybody feeling good about that? All right, let me see how much more we have. All right. Yeah, let's knock out 24 now. All right. So 24 is a proportion. All right, so how do we solve a proportion? We're going to go this times this, and then we're going to go this times this. All right. So when I cross multiply, we are going to say 2x times 3x minus 2 equals 3. All right, now we have to distribute properly. So I end up with 6x squared minus 4x equals 3. Now it's a quadratic, so it has to be set equal to 0. 6x squared minus 4x minus 3 equals 0. All right, now I'm going to see if this can factor. Okay, so again, checking, see if you remember what I said. 6 times negative 3 is negative 18. And I want the factors of negative 18 to be negative 4. So the factors of 18 are 1 and 18, 2 and 9, 3 and 6. Can any of those values make 4? And the answer is what? No. So I can say with certainty that that cannot factor. All right? Is everybody with me on that? That's a really important concept. So because I can say with certainty that that doesn't factor, now we have to use the quadratic formula. All right? So to use the quadratic formula, what we're going to do is we're going to write A equals 6, B equals -4, and C equals -3. All right? Now, what I want you to do for this part is I set it up for you. I want you to now go do it on your own. All right? Let's look at 26. All right? Now, again, we multiply the first times the last. So that's 16. Are there any factors of 16 that are 8? And the answer is yes. All right. So this one can factor. All right. So I want you to work this problem using factoring. All right. And then make yourself a little note right here. I want you to write this down, please. This is a double root. All right. And then I want you to try to remember why or how I know that it's a double root. All right. So let's see what 28 is. Now, 28, I tried to throw this in there, is not a quadratic. It's not a quadratic. It is what? It is linear, okay? It is in fact linear. All right, so this is like chapter 1 or chapter 2 work. That's how basic this is. You just distribute, combine terms, solve for x. All right, does anybody understand what I mean by this is not a quadratic? All right, it's not a quadratic. Why did I call it linear? Something is linear if it's x to the first power. It's a quadratic if it's x to the second power. All right, so that's just normal. All right, now 30. All right, we isolate the square root. Then how do I solve a square root? I do what to both sides? I square both sides. Okay? All right, now to me, I want you to finish those problems up. There's not that much to finish. 24, 26, 28, 30. I'll kind of take a look at that when you submit your work. If you haven't had a chance to do the odds yet, you have to finish up the odds for me. All right. The video I posted, I worked all of the odds. All right. So again, there's lots of good information. And let me say something, because I think you guys are doing fantastic. From my opinion, all right, we don't meet as much. So I think it's important. Like I said, everything, all math is important in my eyes, but this you'll be using all the way through calculus. All right. Using the quadratic formula, solving quadratics. All right. You need to make sure that you know how to do this. All right. I want to help you if you don't know. If you're struggling, send me a note. I'll set up a private Zoom session with you and I'll work with you for 5 or 10 minutes if you're having a bunch of questions. A lot of times I can answer your questions right in the classroom when you send me a message. All I'm doing is sitting at my computer all day answering problems. So you just have to let me know. So please, your focus today is to make sure that this is done. All right, now I didn't assign IXL because I don't like the IXL for the quadratic formula because they want decimals. We don't use decimals, we only use radicals. All right, so does anyone have any questions on expectations? Remember, quality of your work is important and honesty. All right, if you're having trouble, you got to communicate with me. All right, if you don't get an assignment turned in right at time, I don't care. I want it done. I want it done correctly. All right, does anybody have any questions whatsoever? Please constantly check on your backpack to see if my grades are accurate. I try to grade every single day and get as much information in the computer as I possibly can. Anybody have any questions with what they're supposed to be doing? All right, guys, finish up. I'm going to check the odds and the evens today. All right, and I want to see everything done. All right. Hopefully you guys are doing well. I will talk to you later unless someone has a question. Everybody's good? All right, you got it. Go ahead, speak up. Now
Are
it's
you
your
gonna
turn.
put this on YouTube?
Yeah, I'm posting it right now to YouTube.
Okay.
I think it's really important to go back and listen to the videos. That's 100% correct.
Okay.
All right, I'm posting it right now. All right, you guys have a great day.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Bye. Thank you.
Stay healthy.
Bye.
Stay healthy.